Welcome to the Tesla Power Podcast. This is the Tesla energy community covering solar panels, solar roof, and Powerwall for your home. I'm Aaron Brady today. Let's talk about PV system design and capacity. Let's talk about becoming more aware of your energy consumption. Let's talk about getting Tesla on the phone. And I hate to say it, but net metering's days are numbered. Let's do it. As per usual, we'll kick off the pod with community input, and you can participate by leaving a comment below, linking your own YouTube videos, or calling 203-816-5150, or emailing teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. Your input is great education for me, and let's get into some of the gems from this week. So first up, we have Michael Long. He is asking about designing a PV system that's a photovoltaic system or a solar array for the uninitiated. Let's take it full screen. Quote, I thought when designing your home PV system, it's less costly and more efficient to first conserve energy where you can and then design a system to produce. Still trying to process and understand the assertion to consume first and reduce last. Sometimes for a fleeting moment, I get it, but it's quickly overcome by my brain saying, that's heresy. Thanks for taking time to produce this content. End quote. Heresy indeed. I mean, to understand my assertion, we really have to look at the wider picture. We're not just focusing on electricity consumption and covering that current consumption. So let's review that order of importance as I asserted it. First, it would be consumption, then production, and then reduction. So to really boil this whole thing down, everything hinges on your car. If we take a wider view and we realize that we all probably need to move to electric cars, because they're better, they're more efficient, and they're ultimately more environmentally responsible, then that needs to be our first priority. The faster we do that, the better for everyone. Now, that's going to mean we're consuming a lot more electricity because we're shifting our use away from gasoline, which is very energy dense, to electricity, which uses battery storage, which is not nearly as electricity dense, but it's amazingly more efficient. Still, we've got to get, around the issue of what we need to do to produce enough electricity to cover that additional demand. I mean, if we're all driving electric cars, we need to make a lot more electricity. And a huge part of that is going to be your home PV system. Now, what if you're never going to move to an electric car? Then the consumption portion comes off the list, right? Wrong. Your electricity generation will be needed to help fill the additional capacity required by all your neighbors. Their consumption is going to go up, right? If they all have electric cars, they're going to be using a lot more electricity. Now, if we're going to be, thinking forward, thinking ahead, and you think you may get an electric car in the next few years, then just for yourself, just for your own economics, you need to account for that additional consumption when you size your home photovoltaic system. Even if it isn't part of your current consumption, but it's your future consumption, because you'll need to meet that demand. Mostly because it's very difficult to add to a solar system. You would have to change a lot of your power electronics, certainly add to your inverter capacity. I mean, yeah, a lot of the system has to change if you're increasing the size of your system. Not least of which would be permitting for your local government and for your local utility to get power to operate, PTO. But the questions may still remain. Why not replace the central air and the electric dryer and all your other appliances in an effort to reduce electricity consumption in advance of getting an electric car? Because that whole thing might net the increase to zero. Maybe you can reduce your consumption by the same amount that you're increasing your consumption, right? Wrong. Your car will require more electricity than your entire home does now, even if you have terribly inefficient appliances. Plus, the money you spend on new appliances may prevent you from being able to afford the electric car in the first place. And you could purchase more generation capacity more cheaply then you can replace your appliances and reduce your consumption. So, for example, a full AC replacement would be $10,000 or more, and you might save 30%. Let's be generous. Let's say you save 50% of your consumption. But that same $10,000 will get you it will get you 10 kilowatts of additional generation capacity. That'll be multiples of the energy saved at the same price. Even if it's $2 per kilowatt, and you have to spend $10,000 just to get 5 kilowatts of capacity over 12 months, you're going to be generating way more electricity than you save on the efficiency of that appliance, of that, say it's geothermal heat pump, right? And it's a similar story with the dryer, right? You'll need to spend something like $1,000 for a heat pump dryer. It'll save you 50% on your electricity consumption for that appliance, but that same money will get you a kilowatt of solar capacity that'll outgenerate the energy savings you realize with the new appliance. Even if you're able to get half that over the 12 months that you have that solar array in service, it's going to generate way more than you use in the dryer, full stop. So the amount of energy you'll save with the more efficient appliance simply isn't as cost efficient or as resource efficient as purchasing more production capacity. And this is likely to accelerate as solar panels become less and less expensive per watt. A big part of this, of course, is making sure you're efficient with your labor and your tax burden when you put in your solar system. So get as large a system as you can up front, so all your labor is consolidated and you can take advantage of current federal and local tax incentives. So heresy? From one perspective, yes. From a wider perspective, no. Honestly, it might even be inevitable. I love this comment, though. Let me know if this argument is landing or if there are counter arguments I'm not considering. Let's keep this conversation going. I think it is very, very productive. All right, next. J. Scott 1213 points out the effect of the Tesla app. Quote, let's scroll down here. I'm much more energy consumption aware now that I have Powerwalls installed. End quote. And let's admit, it's hard not to become obsessed with the stats in the Tesla app. I find that I'm more obsessed with the app update than I was when I first got the system with the old version of the app. This new app really gets into the juicy details that make it easy to see usage statistics and deduce what the worst offenders are at what times. So you can really do a better job of managing your energy usage. Very early on, I'd seen that we had a 2 kilowatt spike periodically that didn't seem to correspond to any electricity usage that I was aware of. It definitely wasn't plugging in the car. It wasn't the air conditioner. It wasn't when we turned on the dryer or the microwave or when we turned on the oven or anything else, that we were turning on. Come to find out, we have an electric baseboard heater in the basement with a little thermostat. The kids had turned that thermostat to freaking 1,000 degrees. How dare you need to be warm, you dumb kids. but honestly, they don't need a sauna down there either, right? It was a huge waste of energy. And it was awesome that I could see that being used. I might not have noticed that for months, The whole idea is that the kids live in the basement and I never have to see them. I love them, but I never want to see them. But I'm very aware of turning on the oven to make dinner now because I see how much energy it takes. I'm really, very aware of turning on the microwave and the dryer because they're, huge energy hogs. And it's just something that wasn't visible to me before. But I got to say, what's probably going to light my brain on fire again is when we get a look at the detailed 6 months financials. So that's coming up soon, I promise. All right, next up, we have Jerome King. He made a comment, but I had a hard time finding it. Let me pull this full screen. You can see here that it's in my notifications, but if I click on it, oh, it is finally in there? No, this is a different one. Yeah, producing more is nice is a great question, but this one right here, the not sure, when I go into it, it's not actually there. So we'll just have to read it from here. Jerome King says, quote, not sure if you know, but if you can't get in touch with your PA, you can call 877-701-7652 and speak to a random project advisor. At least they can look at your account and give you some info, end quote. I don't know why the comment's not showing up, so it's a little bit annoying to me. I was trying to share it so that everyone could get this info, and it was, I don't know, just wasn't showing up on the video, and all I get is the notification in my stream. But I needed to call that number, right? So I did. Called it 1:45 Eastern time this afternoon. I got someone on the phone about 15 minutes later. She was awesome. She was able to pull up my order. She could read to me the last email with the redlined items. She assured me that the application had been resubmitted with the required drawings, which I didn't even mention. Her note to me was just that I had probably another 8 days before I could expect a response from my utility. I didn't know if that included the Thanksgiving holiday. I forgot to ask, so it could be a little bit longer in my particular case. But Jerome, this number was a huge help. Thank you for sending it. And I'm going to put that number in the show notes for easy access. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to my boilerplate show notes so that it's accessible to anybody that discovers this podcast, independent of this particular episode. Special thanks also to Brian for sending a contact for the escalation team. It wasn't even something I knew existed. It doesn't look like I'll need to use that contact, but very helpful to have the name just in case. Thank you. All right. Next, we have Stephen Green. Sorry. He is showing off some photos of his recently completed project. Let's take his comment full screen. Quote, "My system is finally up and running, though I haven't yet gotten the PTO. The installation was very professional and perfect. 6 people for the installation and 2 for the electrical hookup. The 12 panels, 4 kilowatt and 2 Powerwalls were ordered in late April. It took about 6 months until completion. I am very happy," end quote. So let us check out those photos, right? Photos here. Let me bring them full screen for you. I just want to make sure I'm zoomed in so we can get a good look at them. We can see the panels with a nice low profile on the roof. And you can see all of the finishing bezels that they put around the edge of the solar panels. Really make it look nice. And that's a touch that I don't see on most solar panel installs, actually. Yeah, quite nice. And then next photo, just I think that's the second array. So there's 2 total arrays. Looks like it's a little video to me. That's crazy. I see it moving a little bit, but I'm not sure that's coming through on the video. And then the third item, again, we'll zoom in. We can see we've got the Powerwall Plus with the battery and inverter stack here on the left. And on the right-hand side, we have a supplemental Powerwall. A seriously handsome installation. Congratulations. 6 months from order to install. It's pretty good. Keep us posted on PTO and tell us what utility you have. It'd be interesting to hear, but we look forward to hearing more. And then last up, we have our very first video question. Brian, take it away.
Hey, Aaron. Tesla's coming on Tuesday. They get my timeline up faster, so there's that. They came and put up all this edging on the edge of the roof. Some kind of metal, probably aluminum. There's this stuff. I'm excited. Roof's starting on Tuesday. But right now my project this weekend is putting in a mobile connector on a Tesla Pedestal. So I'm gonna run out of my house here. Dug this trench. It's about 100 feet. Going out to the driveway right here. Had to get some 6.3 UF. It's a pretty gnarly cable. And then, so I got a question. So, what's the best way to mount the pedestal and the mobile connector right here? I have some ideas. I'm just reaching out to the community to see what kind of ideas you guys have. Okay.
So we all know what he's talking about. Here's the manual that came with the Tesla Pedestal. You can see that it's a nice minimal design, just what you would expect from Tesla. You can see, though, that it's got a pretty small base down here. It's not intended to stand on its own. But if we go down to pages 5 and 6, you can see the size of the base a little bit more clearly. On page 6, it shows that the kit does not come with mounting screws or mounting hardware, but they show you can use lag bolts, either 3/8 inch or 1/2 inch lag bolts with appropriate washers. So, over to you, community. What's the best way for Brian to mount the charge pedestal? I don't know. I think it would be kind of boss to bolt it to the side of an oak barrel or maybe a bale of hay. Really lean into that city versus country dichotomy he's really got going on there. But thank you very much to Michael Long, to J. Scott 1213, Jerome King, Stephen Green, and to Brian Foote for all of your input. And we want to hear from you too. Send in your YouTube video links, your comments below, call 203-816-5150, email teslapowerpodcast@gmail.com. Now, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll cover a bit of news. The U.S. Energy Information Administration published a report on solar generation stating, quote, let's take it down a bit. According to our electric power annual, solar power accounted for 3% of U.S. electricity generation from all sources in 2020. In our short-term energy outlook, we forecast that solar will account for 4% of U.S. electricity generation in 2021 and 5% in 2022. In our annual Energy Outlook 2021 reference case, which assumes no change in current laws and regulations, we project that solar generation will make up 14% of the U.S. total in 2035 and 20% in 2050, end quote. Now, one of the things that I see pointed out pretty often by renewables advocates is that the adoption curve is generally projected to be just like this annual report. Let me bring it back in here. They project it to be linear, and you can see that this line goes up at a pretty steady rate out to 2050, along with, energy consumption as a whole. It's just kind of a steady state, 2%. Maybe it, follows inflation or something like that. Well, target inflation anyway. But most renewable energy advocates point out that the actual adoption curve ends up being exponential. So there's this guy, Tony Seba. He's got a couple of videos that are worth watching on this very topic. He's got a channel called RethinkX, and I put a link in the description. Now, both this EIA report and Tony Seba's report are projections at the moment, so we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I would like to point out that market data on solar adoption is showing an exponential curve right now, today. And that trend continued through 2020 in spite of the economic troubles caused by the pandemic. Honestly, it might even have been accelerated. So we can see that the trap the EIA and other reporting agencies tend to fall into is the incorrectly held premises in the LCOE calculation. That's the levelized cost of energy. Specifically, they are calculating that this is at an unrealistically high and an unrealistically constant utilization, where honestly, these facilities simply do not have market demand, especially as they become more expensive. So here's a quick excerpt from the Tony Seba video. Let's take a listen.
And here we come to the crucial issue. Mainstream LCOE analyses assume that capacity factor, and thus electricity generation and sales, will start at an unrealistically high rate and then remain constant year after year after year for a power plant's entire 20, 30, 40-year long lifetime.
but these are fundamental errors. First, capacity factor will not start at a higher rate than market reality. And second, capacity factor will not remain constant. It would be like telling investors and city planners that taxis were going to have a high and constant capacity factor for decades to come, even as new ride-hailing technologies like Uber and Lyft are disrupting that market.
Power plant capacity factor will at best match the market in its first year. And then it will decline as conventional power plants are outcompeted and disrupted by newer technologies. Because
as the transition to renewables takes place, these assets, these power plants, whose utilization estimates were too high to begin with, will be outcompeted by cheap electricity that either you generate yourself or is produced by competing grid-scale renewable sources. I mean, that inevitably lowers their utilization further and will ultimately strand those assets as they become too expensive to operate and their debt can no longer be serviced. I mean, honestly, it's kind of crazy to think about. Let's keep looking for evidence of this over the coming years so we can kind of keep an eye on the trend. Electrek reports that Tesla's hit a milestone of the number of Powerwall installations. Let's bring that full screen. Quote, in May 2020, Tesla confirmed that it installed its first 100,000 Powerwalls, which took them almost 4 years. A year later, in May 2021, Tesla confirmed that it has now reached 200,000 Powerwall installations. We're now in November 2021, and Tesla says it's now reached 250,000 Powerwall installations, end quote. Now, we seem to be watching the rate of installations increase. We were at about 100,000 installations per year currently, but if Tesla can get its suppliers to ramp further, we should see that rate increase to 200,000 units per year in 2022. This is another thing for us to keep an eye on over the next few years. You know, we all know that batteries are the limiting factor for solar and wind adoption. We need as many as we can possibly get. All right, this last one. Law Street Media reports on a very interesting solar acquisition. Let's read this. Crazy. Smart home and security company ADT is poised to expand its residential offerings with its proposed acquisition of SunPro Solar, which will help launch ADT Solar. Pursuant to the deal announced November 9th, ADT Inc. will acquire SunPro Solar for $160 million in cash and 77.8 million shares of ADT common stock for a total value of approximately $825 million. After which, ADT will rebrand SunPro to ADT Solar in an effort to enter the rooftop solar business to offer ADT customers a protected, connected, and now powered home. End quote. Wow. I mean, I don't know a single person that saw this coming. I mean, of course, that makes me think about what might be coming for Tesla on the residential front. We've speculated about this a little bit already, that Tesla would offer an HVAC system, almost confirmed, basically, by Elon and the crew. I have postulated that they would add wind and that they'd add home insurance. But maybe we're all missing a huge opportunity for a connected home and for home security, right? I mean, this could be speaking to the fact that ADT is getting disrupted by the likes of Simply Safe, Ring, Nest, and others. So really, it could be more of a move to diversify their business before they're forced out of business altogether. But I honestly expect that this is hinting at a trend toward merging home automation and home service industries. These are currently, mostly outside the Tesla sandbox. But I think we can all see a world in which Tesla provides automation for the HVAC unit, much like they do for current solar and battery systems. Then we could see them branch out into security, much like they already do for automotive with Sentry Mode, and then add to that insurance. And maybe I'm reaching a bit here, but Starlink for data, And with all of that, you have a really interesting bundle of products and services that Tesla could offer to consumers on a unified platform. You know, they could probably add even entertainment to that bundle, right? If they move to use their cars as entertainment platforms, why not extend that platform into the home? So it got my mind racing, you know, a lot, thinking about this ADT acquisition and where companies might go, including Tesla. But I thought it was super interesting that ADT is getting into the solar business. Just crazy. So anyone think that I'm getting way out there on the Tesla side of this stuff? You know, maybe this does cause the same bells to ring for you too. I don't know. Let's discuss in the comments. Last up, we have an Idaho Public Radio news story that brings us our cover story today. So let's take a listen.
A proposed study by Idaho Power could determine how much the utility will pay people who produce extra solar energy. Rachel Cohen reports.
The Idaho Public Utility Commission gave Idaho Power the go-ahead to study net metering, specifically the costs and benefits of extra energy produced by customers using their own solar panels.
One of the core things being studied for the new program is whether there should be a difference between what you pay to consume and the value of that export from your roof.
That's Ben Otto, an energy associate with the Idaho Conservation League. He says people who already have rooftop panels are able to sell solar power back to the grid at the retail price of electricity, but Idaho Power has been fighting for this arrangement to change for recent and new customers. Public Information Officer Jordan Rodriguez argues they aren't paying their fair share of the utility's maintenance and distribution costs.
We are looking to make some updates to those policies to try to make it just a little more fair and balanced for all of our customers.
The study will help the Commission come up with a plan for compensating solar producers. The board is taking comments on the study's design through the end of this month. Rachel Cohen, Boise State Public Radio News.
Did you hear that? Looking to make it more fair and balanced. End quote. Translation? Net metering will die. This radio piece cites transmission and maintenance as the biggest concerns to the utility. But you know what the real issue is? Storage. So if it's just storage, why kill net metering instead of incentivizing storage? Well, because the utility needs to invest in utility scale storage to accommodate residential solar. And they'll need to invest in its own solar and battery projects to stay competitive. But you ask, who are they competing with? They're competing with you. They're competing with residential solar. And that's why it's not just enough to raise the connection fees that everyone pays to connect to the grid. And it's not simply a matter of paying the maintenance and transmission costs. It's a lot more than that. And with the deregulation of utilities, there's the matter of extracting value for shareholders as well. I mean, you might not know, but Idaho Power is a publicly traded utility with half of its capacity coming from hydro and the remaining capacity coming from natural gas and coal. Referencing the Tony Seba video clip from earlier, this company has got some investing to do to move its generation from natural gas and coal over to solar and wind. But this story, it will play out over and over again in utility service areas all across the country and all around the world. The business model of utility corporations will require that net metering end so that profits can be made, at best, so those profits can be reinvested into renewable assets, and at worst, to service the debt and maintenance of non-renewable assets. Net metering is an incentive to drive it's to drive residential solar adoption explicitly. And once those incentives are no longer needed, they'll be removed. So that does beg the question, at what point will the incentive no longer be needed? Well, that's going to be at the intersection between the falling capital costs of installing solar and the rising capital and maintenance costs of baseload assets owned by the utilities. And the more residential adoption net metering drives, the faster that intersection arrives. So I see the incentives shifting from the net metering model to the demand response generation model, much like Eversource is implemented. Go check out episodes 5 and episode 19 for details on that program. This is a market-driven incentive rather than a government-mandated incentive. And I truly believe that it's going to be the future of residential solar and battery storage, as well as the future for utilities. And that'll do it for episode 35 of the Tesla Power Podcast. You are welcome, of course, to use my referral code. You can save $500 on a solar roof and $300 on solar panels from Tesla. You can go to ts.la/Aaron62310 to place your order. I am your Tesla residential energy community organizer, Aaron Brady. And let's do this again on the next video.